This is Bobby Bradford, also known as Bobby Sax. You see the wall, the words there, Sax Man? Well, truer words were never spoken. Bob has been entertaining people for decade after decade after decade. He's had an incredible career and met some amazing people along the way. People who taught him, played with him, inspired him, and loved him. I had the honor and pleasure to sit down and listen to Bob reminisce. And I feel like I got to know those people through Bob's words and memories. And now you have that same opportunity. Sit back, enjoy the ride. I'd like to start. You've been playing the sax for over 70 years. Why the saxophone? Do you remember when you first got started?
At 10 years old, in our neighborhood was the Mount Carmel Church. And they had a band, and they would teach you, give you the instrument. The professor, the musical professor, was there, and I started learning the saxophone on the soprano sax. That was my first sax. And then when you got better, they would give you the uniform, and you march behind the saints with all the different parades in the town in Jersey City. And that's how I got started. And I have Mount Carmel Church to thank to make me begin my career in playing the saxophone.
How was growing up in that neighborhood?
It was nice. I grew up in an Italian section. I was half Italian, but I had a grandfather, my Gooch, and he was well liked. We lived next door to the Italian American Club, and my grandfather had horses and ponies. And when the feast was there, he used to give kids a ride, right? Because he had a big backyard. And growing up, it was a wonderful neighborhood.
You mentioned your grandfather, and we'll get back to that. Talk a little about your mom and dad.
My father was from Maryland, and my mother was from Jersey City. And they fell in love, but my mother said to him, I'm not living on no farm. You want to marry me, you come to Jersey City. And lo and behold, he came to Jersey City. They married, and here I am.
Did they encourage you to play music?
Yes. Yes, they did. And they wanted me to practice every night. And then when I got better, relatives would come over, and my father would say, oh, Bob, play this song for them, you know. And they were very proud. And as I got better and working in the clubs, they would come to see me every so often, you know. And it felt good. And the thing that I appreciate what my father did, in Mount Carmel Church, they gave you the instrument. And then my father made a $30 donation, and they let me keep the soprano, which I still have today.
Let's get back to your grandfather, because you said when you got better, you know, you played for the neighborhood and then ultimately, right. But your grandfather did something real special for you.
Yes. When I was 15, my grandfather said, I want you to put your best suit and tie on, and I'm taking you to New York. I didn't know what he was talking about. So we go to New York. We pull up to the Copacabana, and there was a line waiting to get in, but he went through the back door, through the kitchen, and he knocked on the door, and lo and behold, I met Jimmy Durante. I didn't know who Jimmy Durante was, but Jimmy Durante and my grandfather were very close friends, and their families grew up together in Naples, Italy. And he, still to this day, I remember Jimmy Durante saying, There's always going to be saxophone players better than you, but you want to be an entertaining saxophone player. Like myself, when I entertain, I play the piano. There's millions of people better than me, but I entertain. I make people laugh, and that's the whole gist of making people happy, enjoying themselves. To be an entertainer saxophone player.
So what does that mean? Like, how did you take that advice and incorporate it into your playing?
Well, what I remember still to this day, there were other bands that just played music. They actually played for themselves. But I learned how to play pretty for the people. One of the fellows that I met when I was in the 11th grade was Danny LeMago. He had the knack to being a showman, you know. His voice was an average voice, but he relied on entertaining and dancing and doing everything. I remember in the 11th grade when he asked me to join him because his saxophone player broke his hand, and he was laid up for almost a year. And Danny heard about me coming up, and he asked me to play. And my mother and father used to come to see me, and they had such a great group, Danny LeMago and the Jumpin' Jacks. And if you didn't get to the club at 9 o'clock, you couldn't get to the bar. It was packed, and he had such a following. To me, he was the first Jersey boy. I worked with him off and on my whole career, but he was the one who showed me physically how to capture the people and make me be an entertaining saxophone player.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that, you've been performing for over 80 years, and there's people along the way that leave, whether it's Jimmy Durante or Danny LeMago or others that you'll talk about, they just leave this indelible lesson on you that makes you the performer that you are.
Well, another person is Bernie Sweeney. I call him the Irish Godfather. All the musicians, they hated to work for him because he would say, the band is too loud, this and that. And Bernie and I got along. He always broke my cogliones, but he knew when he had weddings, and it was a big catering, hold about 1,000 people, and I would entertain the people. I would come out from the kitchen with a chef's outfit on, and I would take the tray and bounce it on the dance floor. And he said, "Oh, that crazy Bobby Bradford, he's the only one that can get away with this," because I would throw all the other musicians out the door. But Bobby, he makes the people laugh, and they come up to me and say, "This saxophone player is a great entertainer." So Bernie and I, we got along for the rest of his life, and I love the man.
So here you are, you're an 11th grader, you're going to high school in the day, you're playing at night. Take it the next step. What are some of the other bands you played with?
Well, in 1961, I had the pleasure of working down the shore opposite this next group that I'm going to talk about. And their saxophone player was leaving, and it was at the end. It was in Kingsburg, New Jersey, and it was at the end of the season. And it was Paul Ferrano. He was a drummer, Italian drummer, and he was married to Pearl Reeves, a guitar player and a great guitar player and a singer. And it was a mixed group, and she sang like Dinah Washington, all those famous black singers.
Well, I've got a man, he's looking low. He used to love me, but he don't no more. You got to step it up and go. You got to step it up and go. Well, you can't stay here, I swear. You got to step it up and go.
What I liked about that group, they asked me to go on the road. We went to Vegas, and we went to New Orleans, and they were from Newark, New Jersey, and it was a probably, I would say 80%, it was a black club, but it was a real down home. She would walk the bar and told me, "Come on, Bob, walk the bar with me." And she showed me how to play a dirty sax like a real honker. I really learned the nitty gritty when they did their arrangements. and I have all the respect for them. They were a great entertaining group, and it was a mixed group. They treated me wonderful.
I'm almost visualizing the idea that here you are at Mount Carmel Church, you're playing a little bit, then you go to the next level, and then you're playing with Danny in 11th grade, and then New Orleans and Las Vegas, and I can almost see like a sponge just getting more and more and more and more knowledge and showmanship each step of the way.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because it was like meant to be in order from day one, when I first picked up the sax at Mount Carmel, right to the present day. Each person that I'm mentioning fell right in line from 1951 right through 2024 of today. And I think of them and I miss them. I miss them terribly, but I put a smile on when I think of each person, because each person had an individual talent working with people, customers, and entertaining and making people laugh, whether it be a wedding, a birthday party, anniversary. It was just fantastic, and I am so grateful I took that route in the music business.
Along that similar line, I loved when you said, anytime I play Sorrento, even to this day, it reminds me of my grandfather.
Yeah, my grandfather, he came to me, and they called him my gooch, and I can hear his voice now. My gooch would say, "Bobby, play me Sorrento," and I say, "Yes, grandfather."
Grandpa, my gooch, this song is for you. I love you. Hear the music of the ocean, sighing in vows of wondrous passion, as they bring in gentle fashion dreams that tell of tender love. Vido mari quando bella, spiro tanto sentimente, come tu che ti lamenti, cascita tu fa sonare.
Actually, the song Sorrento probably is my theme song from day one. Every club that I played at, I would play Sorrento, and they would all give me a standing ovation. They loved the arrangement.
Well, you have another sort of famous Bob story about Sorrento in Italy, right?
Yes. In the 60s, I was in Italy. Some way, somehow, maybe it was my grandfather contacting the boys. They had a wine cellar that only special people would witness. And so when I went to Italy, they approached me and they made me an offer that I couldn't refuse, which was, you want to see our wine cellar? You play Come Back to Sorrento. And what did I do? I played Come Back to Sorrento. And I'm telling you, I've never seen a homemade wine cellar ever like this one I saw. And that was for the boys from Italy.
I don't want to gloss over Vegas because there's so many movies, there's so many images of Vegas pre like what's happening in Vegas now. What was your experience in Las Vegas?
A lot of the bouncers that worked the Jersey Shore, they became the bouncers out in Las Vegas, and I knew a lot of them. And they got me in. I remember one night, I was off that night, and they said that, hey, Bob, Sinatra is going to be at the Sands with Count Basie. You want to come in? I said, yeah. He says, you know how to come in. Come in through the kitchen. So they got me a seat, and I'm telling you, Sinatra, I had the pleasure to meet him, and it was an unbelievable night. And he had the people right in the palm of his hand. And here's a guy from Hoboken, New Jersey, right next to Jersey City, where I grew up. And I felt so great that here's a superstar, and he's from New Jersey.
You know, we can't talk about musicians from Vegas and not mention Sam Butera.
Sam Butera is my idol. I kind of copied his version of Come Back to Sorrento. I met Sam Butera in 1972 in the Rainbow Grill in Rockefeller Center. It was a club restaurant at the top, and you could see in my picture with him, I was a little heavy at the time, and I had a mustache on me, and I had an afro at that time in the 70s. I became friends with him all the way through to the end of days, but I always saw him when he came to Atlantic City, and we rode back and forth to each other, and he was a good friend of mine, and I loved him, and he gave me tips of what type of reed to use and everything. But when he played Sorrento, it was like the Ave Maria of that song, and he had such a great showmanship. And of course, he was with Louis Prima. I'm not going to deny I love copying those guys, you know. And Louis Prima and Sam Butera, they were born and raised in New Orleans. And I had the pleasure to go down there with like I say, Pearl Reeves and Paul Ferrano. I love that man, Sam Butera. He's my idol. He always will be.
Bob, I know this isn't musical, but I know a doctor of yours is very, very important to you.
Dr. Rosa. Thank you for keeping my heart beating in sync to music with my saxophone. You are my rhythm heart music man, doctor. Dios te bendiga. Yo te amos siempre. Gracias.
Bob, does music run in your family at all?
Yes, it does. My mother told me about my grandfather's brother's son who played with Tex Beneke when Tex Beneke took over the Glenn Miller Band. He played the first tenor sax, and that gave me the energy to take up the saxophone. I have to give thanks to Vincent Carbone.
Now, I know you have two really good friends that you played a lot with. Frankie and Tommy mean a lot to you, don't they?
These next two guys, believe it or not, out of all the people that I mentioned, they're the only two that are living today, including myself. Frankie Cupo, keyboard entertainer. Tommy Cavalucci, drums entertainer. We go back to 1958 when we were in different groups. We met in the French Quarters in Union City in 1958. We became friends then, and we're still friends today. These guys are priceless friends, and we're known as the three old geezers from Jersey City. Love these two guys, Frankie Cupo and Tommy Cavalucci.
I'm just picturing, you must have put on a great show. You know, when you say he was an entertainer, and I was, that must have been a wild show that you guys put on.
Here's a perfect, so I'll break each one down. Frankie Cupo, he played the piano in such a way, he carried the bottom of when he was with Danny LeMago all these years. He was the man that kept that rhythm going while Danny was entertaining. And I've yet to hear a piano player that would lay the rhythm down. Also, Tommy Cavalucci playing the drums, he laid the same thing down with his double beat on his bass drum. When I first heard a drummer, Tommy, hit a double beat on the bass drum, I flipped out. I never heard a drummer like him. And these two, I love these two guys. And we're still friends today.
Did both of them play at your wedding?
Tommy Cavalucci played at my wedding when I married Carol in 1995. Frankie, I think he was out of town that day, and he wanted to play, but I think he was out of state. But I would have preferred to have him, but I got Vinnie Giles. But I worked on and off with Frankie and Tommy with different groups and all through my years. And I love these two guys.
Well, Carol has been mentioned. So certainly in a video where you're offering thanks and talking about people who are important to you, kind of saved the best for last with Carol Lee.
Carol Lee. I put an ad in the Bergen Record, New Jersey. Carol left her number. Then I called her back, and we spoke over 2 hours on the phone in November 1994. We met for lunch, we fell in love, and like the song says, we meet and the angels sing and leaves their music ringing in my heart. Got married March 24th, 1995 on my mother's birthday, thanks to Carol. Fast forward 29 years later, still cooking with my baby cakes.
To my husband, if you're the music, I'll sing and dance, 'cause you put the man in our romance.
Thank you, Jesus, for my saxman entertaining music life and granting me with the serenity, courage, and wisdom to go forward one day at a time and to live in the present so beautiful that it will be worth remembering. God bless everyone, and God bless America. Respectfully, with love, in Jesus' name, amen. Kurt Sneck, my beloved son, great father and role model, wonderful family man, and fabulous drummer. Danny Allo, Allo's Imports and Market, my sponsor. Danny Allo and I are Italian blood brothers. Danny is my consigliere, and I'm his wingman. I play pretty for the people from the American Music Songbook. I'm forever grateful, with all due respect, and many thank yous to my producer and director, Mike Zito. Daylight, I must wait for the sunrise. I must think of a new life, and I mustn't give in. When the dawn comes, tonight will be a memory too, and a new day will begin. Buongiorno.